Another interesting thing that's happened, and which most people are not talking about, is US sanctions on China. And I'm not talking about the regular sanctions, the kind of sanctions they are imposing on Russia. These are very specifically targeted sanctions. The Americans are calling these export controls. To be more specific, semiconductor export controls. What's happening? Let's take a look at this. I'm not sure if this has been covered adequately in the media. Let's take a look at this. Uh, so US chip sanctions put temporary checkmate on China. That's what this article says. It's in the EE Times, whatever that is. Yeah. Biden administration's escalation of the chip war with China is expected to at once hamper China's foundry industry and cost multinational chip makers billions of dollars in lost sales. So it's this article says these sanctions are putting a temporary checkmate on China, and yet there are other views, other perspectives on this, which are not as um, which are quite different. So let's take a look at this if it ever loads. Yeah. So this is a thread on Twitter by Jordan Schneider, right? Who is an analyst on China on technology. He also has his own podcast. So let's take a look at this thread, which I find very interesting. The US government's new export controls are wreaking havoc on China's chip industry. So let me go through the thread first and then explain what this means. So, new rules around US persons are driving an industry wide decapitation in the chip industry, semiconductor industry in China. Lots of people don't know what happened yesterday. This was tweeted on October 14. To put it simply, Biden has forced all Americans working in China to pick between quitting their jobs in China or losing American citizenship. That's how strong this is. Every American executive and engineer working in China's semiconductor industry resigned yesterday, paralyzing Chinese manufacturing overnight. One round of sanctions from Biden has done more damage than all 4 years of performative sanctioning against under Trump. Uh, with the new Biden sanctions, all American suppliers of IP blocks, components, and services departed overnight, thus cutting off all service to China. Long story short, every advanced node semiconductor company is currently facing comprehensive supply cutoff, resignations from all American staff, and immediate operations paralysis. This is what annihilation looks like. China's semiconductor manufacturing industry was reduced to zero overnight. Complete collapse, no chance of survival. All right. So that's a whole long Twitter thread on this, but I will stop it here. So, what does it mean? The Americans have essentially nuked China's chip industry, semiconductor industry, right? And at the same time, they are prioritizing their own industry. So, they want all this manufacturing to start happening in the US again. Right now, the Chinese were in the process of creating their own massive chip making industry, semiconductor industry. They have a great deal of expertise in that, not as much as Taiwan. So all of this revolves to a certain extent around Taiwan. Where is Taiwan? We haven't seen the map today. So why don't we look at the map? In case we don't know where Taiwan is, let us find out where it is. Let's explore the map together. Where's the map? Well, here's the map. Here we are. We know where India is. Yes, I hope we all do. This is India. Let's go east, and here we have the island of Formosa or Taiwan, right, which is off the eastern coast of China, southeastern coast of China. So Taiwan has the world's largest semiconductor manufacturing industry, chip making industry, which and most of the chips that go into our cell phones, our tablets, our laptops, and whatever else, most of these chips, they come from Taiwan. All right, Taiwan is the number one manufacturer of chips, semiconductors, and all that. The Chinese are trying to catch up with Taiwan and become a major chip maker themselves. The Americans want America to once again become the major chip making nation in the world, or at least be able to offset whatever Taiwan could possibly not be able to give them. Because Taiwan is something that the Chinese covet. The Chinese would like to take over Taiwan. So, let's understand what the Americans have done. Taiwan is something the Chinese want to conquer. They call it reunification of Taiwan with the motherland, the homeland, the mainland China. If the Chinese try to invade Taiwan, there is a very distinct possibility that the Taiwanese will sabotage their own factories, their own industry of chip making, which could essentially give China a hollow victory. They could possibly conquer Taiwan, but they will get nothing that the Taiwanese were producing. If the Taiwanese destroy all those factories and all the entire chip making industry. So the Chinese, in order to offset this possibility, were developing their own chip making industry. Now this depended to a great deal on America, on American uh, talent, on American executives and American exports to China and all that. Now all of that has been stopped overnight. So the Chinese chip making industry essentially has been destroyed overnight. So if they try to conquer Taiwan and the Taiwanese destroy the Taiwanese chip making industry, the Chinese will be left with nothing. In the meanwhile, the Americans will once again augment their own chip making industry, and they hopefully for them will become the number one chip maker again in the world, or at least be able to offset what they could lose if Taiwan is conquered. So that's what we are seeing right now. That's what we are seeing. So the Americans have essentially nuked the Chinese chip making industry via these so-called semiconductor export controls, which are much more than export controls. They've essentially given an ultimatum to all US citizens working in China in this industry: resign, or you're going to lose your citizenship in the US, your US citizenship. That is a massive strike, essentially almost like a nuclear strike on on the Chinese chip making industry. So the trade war is hotting up. It's crossing lots of limits. Um, the US is deadly serious about ensuring that China does not become a superpower, right? And typically, the Chinese, when they are faced with when sanctions are put on China, the Chinese respond in some way. They place some counter sanctions on American companies and all that. But in this case, I don't see China being able to retaliate in any way. They have no real leverage when it comes to this sort of uh, these sort of sanctions against them. So I don't see the Chinese being able to retaliate in kind. Maybe they will retaliate somewhere else, but it does look like their chip making industry has been reduced to zero overnight, and that is a very major development. And I'm really wondering why nobody is covering this. Yeah, so this is something I thought I should talk about, and we will keep an eye on this as well. Let's see how this develops.